Now we are back with Shmuela Jacobs. So please, a big applause for her. She's a mom, an NG mom of two NG boys, and a Google developer expert in Angular, and she had was a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and of course a lot of experience in this field. And her talk is "It's Alive: Dynamic Components in Angular." So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really exciting to be here. It's my first conference since I don't know how much time. You know, it's really hard to go to conferences when you have two NG boys, the little ones, and I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for having me. Yeah. Cool. All right. So yeah, my talk is about dynamic components in Angular, and it's actually a talk that I've done a few years ago, but a lot has changed, and of course for the better, and things have become very much easier now to work with dynamic components. So I'm going to show what we're doing here. And first, so like Michaela said, I'll shortly introduce myself. This is my GitHub, my Twitter handle. You can send me message, follow me, and I'm the founder of NG Girls. We have a workshop of NG Girls tomorrow here as part of Angular Days, and I'm really happy for this opportunity. At NG Girls, we do free workshops for women, and we teach them Angular from the basics. It's a whole day workshop, and we have volunteering mentors from the community like yourselves, and these can be women or men that are mentoring. And we have a tutorial, and of course we update it all the time, and we come and we do an intro, and then we also we let the women who participate follow the tutorial with the help of the mentors. And it's an amazing experience to see someone who has just a little bit of experience as a developer, as a programmer, maybe is a student, or maybe is coming for an adjacent a profession like QA or something else in IT, trying to work with Angular for the first time. It's really amazing to see this. So I have pictures from recent workshops that we've had. And yeah, like Michaela said, I'm also a freelancer, self-employed consultant and trainer working on my own business. So if you have any advice or any tips, anything to tell me about that, I'll be really happy to hear. And this is my family. Really, from a few days ago, we're taking this opportunity to travel a little bit in the area. This is in Croatia. So these are my two NG boys. The one on the back is actually the bigger one. He's 4.5 years old. It's Nadav. And the one that I'm holding is Asaf. He's 2 years old. And the guy next to me holding Nadav on the back is Chagai. He's React dad. So we have a really good conversations in the family. It's good. Diversity is great. All right, so back to our topic. Let's do a demo first. Okay, so what are dynamic components? Who's using dynamic components already? Okay, a few of you. Okay, so for the rest of you, maybe you have some ideas about what a dynamic component is. So let's see if we think the same. So this is just an Angular starter project, right? And it looks very static, no dynamic components here, right? But maybe if I click on this rocket, is it dynamic now? Is this a dynamic component? What do you think? No. Okay, so I have a dynamic component for you. If I click on the Angular icon, This is a dynamic component, right? It's very dynamic. It's just traveling all around the screen, right? Okay, now, so these things actually, if you do it with Angular, then your browser might be a little bit suffering. I think I did it with intervals. You should do such things with CSS if possible, with animations. But dynamic components actually are components that can be added in runtime, and you don't know which component you're going to add. Maybe it's by configuration, or the user just requests a specific component, and you can even lazy load these components. Okay, so here, if I click here in this area, I add dynamic components. Can you see this? Maybe I'll do a little. This is the, yeah, okay. Okay, did I do the right thing? I don't know. Okay, so I'm just adding components here. And actually, I have this random function here that gives me different dinosaurs to load wherever I click. But if I open the DevTools, I'll see that unless this dinosaur has already been loaded, let me see the network, then let's do it again maybe. Okay. And zoom in. Okay. Okay, so you see that when I load a component, then it also loads the source code for this component. Okay. So you can see different dinosaurs. I can also add plants, different types of plants, and other types of properties. And then I can also select one of the things that I added, and I can like move it up, move it left. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not like a designer. I just did simple buttons here, you know. But it's doing the stuff that it's kind of supposed to do, even if I'm clicking on shrink it. Yes, yeah. All right. So the project is on GitHub, and you can submit issues or feature requests. Oh. Cool. So, and by the way, if you don't know, Villaggio del Pestacole is a place near Trieste, and they recently found fossils of dinosaurs there. I tried to go there during my trip, like yesterday, but it's closed for renovation, I guess. So next time that we're having this conference here in Verona, all right? Cool. All right, so let's go back to the slides, and we'll see what's happening behind the scenes. So let's talk about static components first, because you know maybe it looks a bit the same. You don't know what's happening when you're actually using the application. You need to think about it in the behind the scenes, what's happening here. So static components, we use them directly in the template. They have the selector, the element name. And so we have here app header, we have the tab set and the tab and app note. All these are components that are known in development time. I know what component I want to put here in the template. I put it in a fixed location. I know that the app note is here. And if I want to use it somewhere else, I'll need to also use it in a different place in the template. Okay, I can use ngIf and stuff like that, but I know exactly where it goes. So and I have to pass also all the properties and the event, subscribe to the events here. So it's very hard coded, kind of hard coded inside the template, right? And this is fine for most of the application. It's okay. It's the right way to do this. But imagine that you're working on a dashboard. Who here has been working on a dashboard at work? All right, quite a few people, right? If you haven't, then I guess you're lucky. Maybe you're doing other interesting stuff. So if you're working on a dashboard, so this is an example, you may have many different types of components. Here are like different types of graphs. It can be other components, and maybe you have like tens or hundreds or even thousands of types of components that you can use in your dashboard, but you're not going to use all of them. Okay, you just want what's specific to your needs, so you don't need to load all of them, and you want the components, of course, to get data and be interactive and be and react to changes in the application, and not just static, of course. Okay, so if we're trying to do this with static components, um, then well, this is the slide showing how many components we may have in the dashboard, different types of components, as many as the stars in the galaxy. It could be, yeah. Maybe we have many, many other teams um, creating components for their own company even that we as developers of the dashboard we're not aware of. So it looks like that if it's static. For every component, you're gonna have a template there, um, and you're gonna maybe use a switch case. So looking at the type of the component that you need, and then you need to bind to all the data inside, to all the properties, and so it repeats itself. And here I have, I think, 5 components, but it will be like 1,000 if you have 1,000 types of components, and you don't want code like that. And you can't split it to smaller components because this is as far as it goes. When you have switch case, you need to have everything inside. It's like you put all the the components itself there. You can't split the code anymore. So we don't really want this. And again, it will load everything into the browser, and it will be like a huge bundle. So imagine, just imagine, if this code could just look like this. Just one line like this. What do you think? Yeah. All right, so I'll go quickly and showing you how to do it, but first for a few more use cases. By the way, I don't have a clock here, so if someone can tell me how much time is left. Um, okay, so I have like 15 minutes, I don't know. Thank you. Yeah, 15 minutes. Great. Awesome. So more use cases for dynamic. Oh, here are the use cases. So like I said, dashboard, data-driven forms. So say you want to load forms by configuration, or maybe even load a form component, an input of a certain type according to the previous input. Okay, so maybe like if it's an address in the United States, then it will look different than an address in Europe. Then you'll have a different form, or some other questions that you're going to have. When we use pop-ups or modals, or in Angular material, it's called dialog. Then you get a container, and the container has to be like attached to to the body of your application. It can't be attached to a specific element because you need to have this all this overlay and this scrolling things. So that's a dynamic component that gets dynamically attached to the body of your application. And the content of the dialog is also a dynamic component that you write, okay? Because Angular material doesn't know what you want to put inside. So you create a component, and it dynamically loads it inside the dialog. Okay, so here are 2 dynamic components. Content management systems, for example, Angular I/O. I believe if it hasn't changed in the past few years, they're also using, they have the template for the documentation, the template for how things will look, okay, for how the code will be styled, how the um, links will be styled, everything, but the content itself is dynamically loaded because every time they have like a different documentation that is loaded inside. So that's another use case. Embedding Angular components into foreign components. So in this example, I was working with a framework for diagrams that was written in Backbone. It's called Joint.js. Okay, that was a few years ago. Um, so it's a very, very big diagram framework. So the diagrams framework was loaded inside an Angular project, and then I wanted to connect it to create in the diagram like boxes of comments. So these are like comment components, but use the backbone component that you can move it and resize it and everything. So I loaded dynamically inside the backbone component, an Angular component, and it was connected with change detection and with the services. Everything was connected to the application itself. And we have, I have a reference from a few years ago by Yuri, who wrote about how to do this. He was doing an example with maps and adding the Angular components inside the tooltips of the map. Okay. Um, Here's Yuri. Where is Yuri? Good. Oh, where? Oh, hey, hey. Like, oh, okay. And another example, Wiser.me, they're doing worksheets for schools where you have different types of questions and like, you know, usually you would like draw this on a paper and then put it for make copies of it for all the students, and it's fun and everything, but it's more engaging when it's online, when it's on the computer, and you can even get more data and process it. So they created this thing where you can compose your own worksheet from different elements. Um, and um, you can dynamically load the elements that you need. And an idea that they have is also to let you write your own components that you want to add to your worksheet. Your worksheet. So that's a really, really cool project. And by the way, they're hiring. They want to migrate their Angular JS application to Angular. So if you want, you can ask me about that. So these are the main examples for dynamic components. And I want to go just back. This is like just in a few, just a few little lines of code of how you achieve this. You put um, the reference on the ng container, and you use ng container because it's not like added to the HTML as an element. Then you get the reference in your component using view child, and then you just create the component, and you can import it lazily so that it's not loaded with the whole application, only on demand. Okay, so let's go step by step what's going on here, and we'll see more options. Okay. Okay, so that's where the component is inserted. Somewhere in your template, of course, you can have more things in your template. You should. Somewhere you will have an ng container with a reference to it. And if you want, it doesn't need to be an ng container, okay? It can be any element. But that signals where it's going to be inserted. So it's going to be inserted right after the ng container element. And then you use view child, and you need to read it as view container ref to get the reference to this container, to the place where you're going to insert it. And well, this code, it's too long, right? It's like 5 lines that I need to explain here. Getting the injector and using a component factory. All of this was true for a few years ago, but now we don't need all of it. We just need one single line. Just create component and passing in the component. So it gets the injector from the component that you're on. It gets everything in it, but of course you have more options. But if we use it this way, and I just pass it the component in class, then it means that I need to import the component class into this code. So it's not lazy loaded. So what we're going to do is create a standalone component. Okay, so it doesn't get loaded also with the module, with the ng module. We generate a component with a standalone flag, like Simona has showed us just an hour before. Okay, a new feature by Angular. So it doesn't update ng modules, it just creates the files of the component with the standalone true parameter. And you can also import to it other standalone components or modules. And the rest is like pretty much the same. And then instead of importing it directly, you're using async import. So you can see here the await import and the path. And then from there, once you load this this file, this module, JavaScript module, you get the Dino component, the class itself that you need from there, whatever you exported. And then you create the component. That's it. On the you use the view child reference and create on it the component. All right. That's amazing, right? That's amazing. All right. And like I showed you, it doesn't load it ahead of time in the application. Okay. Now, a bit of a problem is that you must have the path hard-coded here, okay? And also the name of the class that you're going to import, okay? If you're trying to do even something like this, just have the path as a variable, as a constant variable, and pass it here, it will not work. Like you will get an error from Webpack because it really needs to know everything ahead of time. Where is everything? So if you're passing a variable, it's like, oh no, I'm not working this way. Okay. So there are ways to deal with it, because sometimes you don't know the path for the component. Sometimes there's a different team working on the components, or like I said, even like internal for your client company, they're working on their own components. So the way that you can deal with that is using module federations, and Yuri will talk about this right after me. So here's the recipe, the short recipe. You create a standalone component for the dynamic component. You add a reference to the ng container. You get the reference with view child and view container ref, and you import the component and create it here on the view container ref. That's it. All right, next. We want to pass imports and events. So how do we do this? Like everything in the world, there are several ways to do one thing. Some are better, some are not, some have different use cases. So when you create a component, first get like hold the reference to the component that you created. It can be either on the class itself, or it can be like a constant if you're doing everything in the same method. So here I added this member added component. And now I can do stuff with it. So I can use a different method to use added component. And added component has the instance on it that gets me inside the component itself. So I have all the members of the component on the instance. So I have, for example, the title. Okay, so I can go directly and change it. And it will work, and it will work with change detection, but it will not trigger on changes. Okay, so it's not really the best way to do this. The better way is to use set input on the added component. Instead of going directly to the instance, you do set input and give the key of the member that you're trying to set and the value, and that's it. And now on changes will work. Now, how do you subscribe to events? Again, two different methods that are one is the similar, like the first one with inputs, but that will be the second one. First, when you have native events that you want to subscribe to, so you want to subscribe to the click event on the whole component, okay, on the whole dynamic component. So you don't have an event emitter that you wrote by yourself for click, right? Just like any other component. So you can go directly to added component dot location dot native element, and then you get the events, and you can subscribe to them using RxJS, read from event, and subscribe to it. And of course, when you subscribe to something, you don't forget to unsubscribe. Awesome. All right, so that's one way for native events. The second way, when it is an event that you have created on the dynamic component, then you created it by yourself, like the close event, then you go to the instance and you get, you go to the reference of the close event by itself, okay? And then you subscribe to it, and again, unsubscribe to this event when you need. That's it. All right. More options and possibilities. So I'm not going to dig into this very much, but if you go into the Angular API and just look inside, and it's really fun to do sometimes, you can see what other options are available to you. So when you use create component, you can pass an injector, for example, if you need a specific injection for some providers. You have projectable nodes, so if you want to project content inside, you have lots of possibilities. And this is the deprecated API, the one that I showed you with 5 lines of code. It's still there, you can still use it because we're having backward compatibility still, but it's basically deprecated. And so this is the class, the methods that you have on the view container ref when you directly get the reference to that. But if you don't have a view container ref, then you can use create component just like anywhere, okay? Just like out of the box, like anywhere. It's a global. But then you're going to need to let it know where it's going to instantiate the dynamic component. And this example that you see here is taken from the API directly, okay? So you bootstrap the application and then you create, you get an element by its ID, like document get element by ID, and you get the injector, and then you create a component, you get a component reference to it, and attach it to the view. So this is what happens behind the scenes when you use the view container ref. Okay, all kind of most of these steps. Okay, so this is again, it's in the documentation of the API. You can find it, and if there are any updates, you will see the updates there. There are more exciting possibilities. For example, plugin components, like I talked about, when someone else will create the components that you're going to load in the application, and you don't even know about it. Now, it might not be safe in all in all scenarios, but sometimes you do want to let people do that, or at least have different teams working on completely different projects and then bundle the somehow separately, but still know about each other and load it from different places. Really load the dynamic components from a different host. So if you want to do this, um, Manfred Steyer has a really great guide about how to do this, how to create plugin components, and he's doing this using module federations. So, like I said before, Yuri is actually going to talk about it right now, like in a few minutes. So just stay here to learn how to do this. And my resources, so this is the resource for the article from a few years ago that Yuri wrote. And Netanel Basel also wrote a really good article about getting to know the Create Component API. So looking at what I showed you, but going step by step what everything is doing there. And also I used a video by Plofanis. He did a really cool video about how to create dynamic components in Angular and loading them with configuration. So you should also see this video. It's really straightforward, and he's doing a great job there. Um, I tried to deploy the application so you can use it, but I'm having trouble with it. I'm gonna keep trying, but this is basically the URL. You can check it out like in an hour. Maybe I'll succeed, or maybe tomorrow, um, because it only gives me the the main view. You can see the fake dynamic components there, the logos that are going there. Um, and everything is on GitHub. The repository also has some other examples, but you will find your way in the repository. So this is there. And please do add ideas, feature requests, and of course, issues on GitHub. And we'll keep making this demo application really, really awesome. Again, this is me. You can reach out to me via email, GitHub, Twitter. And by the way, Angular Nights is another meetup that I'm running that it's like open to everyone, and I'm doing online events in European friendly time. So you can join the meetup and see when we have more events. So, wow, thank you very much. This has been a very dynamic experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shmuela.
you.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this means that we could also load a whole application constructed with the approach of NX. I mean,
Yeah.
if we create an application, a lib that has built as a standalone, I could also load a whole application with this approach.
Yeah, to load the whole application dynamically.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, you can load the whole application dynamically because an application is basically a component tree that starts with one component. Yeah, you can do that.
Only if I use a standalone component approach.
Um, I
Because,
think there are also other options for that. Maybe if you have different applications that are separated completely, then it should work also. Yeah. I think Yuri is exactly going to talk about that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Then I will wait.
Yeah, and you were saying you're building the whole project with NX.
Yeah.
Okay,
like,
so he's the expert. I think it says NX on his T-shirt.
Yeah, because the first example in the slide with the documentation,
Yeah.
their bootstrap application or bootstrap component that would use the.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can bootstrap a whole application this way. Yeah. Cool.
Hi.
Yeah.
What about if I want to create a dynamic component that accepts a content projection, and I want to create another dynamic component inside this content projection?
Um, well, there are ways to pass content projection there. I didn't put it on the in the demo yet, but you can pass the content projection inside, and I think it should work. Yeah. And if
Okay.
not,
I will try.
you will
Okay,
try.
I
And
will
if not,
try.
let me know and let the
Okay,
Angular team know
sure.
because it
If
it
it
is a
does not
valid
work,
use case.
it's bad. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it should work, right? Content projection of dynamic components inside. Yeah,
I will
totally.
try, but okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the dynamic component destroyed when the parent component is destroyed?
Is the dynamic component actually? I think it should. Is it? Do you know, Simona? If it's destroyed with with the parent component? If the dynamic component is destroyed when the parent component is destroyed? Um. Yeah. Yeah. If you're using the view container ref and it gets destroyed, then it will destroy it as well. Yeah, it manages
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm missing a point. Maybe I was distracted in writing my question and you were telling it. So we started with a template with an ng switch, which is the case that we don't want, of course. And then you said this is very nice. We can have an ng container with a reference.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let me see.
so I imagine that the same case would have to require like to have that switch in the TypeScript code, right? So I will have to say switch. I want this component, so import this. I want this component, so import the other one. So you have a switch in the TypeScript code, right? Is
Yes, yes. You're going to put this in TypeScript because if you are using it this way directly, then you also need to have all the different paths directly. Yes.
okay. So my question is there a best practice for this, a better approach that I can use? Maybe one
Yeah.
of the videos you posted is the answer.
Yeah, so I think that if there are really many components like this, you should use module federation. It just gives, it's just the way Webpack is configured in the default Angular project that you can't do this, that you need to put all everything hard-coded, the paths are all hard-coded. But when you can change the Webpack configuration or use like a different bundler, then you can tell it, hey, I don't know what the path is, and I'm going to get it from somewhere else. Then that's what module federation is about. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm a little bit worried about the performance consideration on having standalone components, since it's like it's a requirement for dynamic components. So what happens when I have like two standalone components and I have the same module imported on the same component? Will the bundler create two bundles with the same library, for example? So if the dependency is moment.js, will I have moment.js included in both the bundles? And so when, for example, you click and you get the dinosaur, you also get the moment.js twice because it's included in the bundle. And if yes, do you have any suggestion on how to handle this?
Yeah, I think you're correct. With the current setup by Webpack, this might happen. But I'm not totally sure. We have to check this. But I know that Manfred is talking about a solution for this with micro frontends. So if you can check his content, he's done videos and like talks and conferences. I think he talked about it at NGConf this year. And he's talking exactly about this, about how not to load again or not to bundle what you already bundled in. I think though that it gets bundled separately. Um, yeah, I think that the ng module is bundled separately, and then it loads it the first time, and the second time it knows that it already exists. I think that's how it works, but yeah, it's a good thing to check and to make sure that Angular works the best way that we want it to. Yeah.
Any other question? No? Okay. So thank you very much, Shmuela, for
Thank
your
you.
presentation.